Until recently, we had a fire watch going on, up and a fire alert going on up in the Santa Fe National Forest, about 1.2 million acres just to the north of us. But they called that off yesterday because we had so much rain from the monsoons. You're in the oldest and highest state capital in the United States. We're the oldest. We were established in 1610 as a Spanish colonial capital city. Talk about that in a little bit, that history. And we're the highest in terms of elevation. We're 7,000 feet where we are right now. Here's some of the basics. We're about 80,000 in population here. Ethnic distribution is pretty interesting, about 45% Anglo and 55% Hispanic. That's the basic breakdown. And that breakdown is historic, going back hundreds of years, and how it developed here. And we'll talk about that during this tour to where we are today. Essentially a tri-cultural area. Well, I just talked about the two cultures that comprise 100% of the population. So where's the third culture come from? Native Americans, Pueblo Indians. Pueblo Indian culture here is extremely important culturally, economically, and historically. And I'm going to talk about them at length during this tour because they're very important to us. They don't live here in the city for the most part. They live on their pueblos. There are 19 pueblos in New Mexico currently. Many more back when the first Spaniards arrived in the late 1500s. And we all supported her when it arrived. It's a Cape Cafe. Kind of an unusual name, but it's a little Italian bistro. And she does a really good job in there. Cappuccinos, espressos, light salads, paninis, things like that.
Had lunch there.
They do?
It was very good.
Yeah, good. Well, there we go. By the way, on this tour, some tour guides don't like it when people talk. If you have a question, feel free to ask. If it's something that I'm going to cover a little bit later in the tour, I'll let you know that, and I will cover it. The Fonda Hotel. There's always an inn on this area here, the Fonda. For a while, this was a Harvey House Hotel. Fred Harvey was famous for building the hospitality units along the railroad. And he was famous for their hospitality girls, the Harvey girls. The movie made out of that. Great place to eat in there. La Pozuela is outstanding. French pastry shop is outstanding. They are, and they have authentic French bread. French bread doesn't have that crisp crust on the outside. It's not the real deal. Well, we're talking about structures here in Santa Fe and architecture. The two styles of architecture I told you about right off the bat, this is a contradiction in those two. This is St. Francis Cathedral. St. Francis Cathedral was built in 1869 under the supervision of a French bishop by the name of Jean-Baptiste Lemay, or Lamy as he's known out here. Lamy came out here by way of Kentucky, Catholic Church sent him out here specifically in 1869 to supervise the construction of this cathedral. And it's French Romanesque in its style, patterned loosely after what is known as the Notre Dame of Paris, France. But it's different in certain respects. The most obvious one is it's much smaller. But there's other reasons as well that it's different. There's supposed to be two steeples, one on the left and one on the right, the north and the south. People were truly replicated from the Notre Dame that had those magnificent steeples. They meant to be up there, but they got to that point of the construction and the architect in charge decided that if they put those two steeples up there, that it would not be supported by the foundation, so they left them unfinished. You can see there's rebar, etc. up there. So as soon as we can clear traffic here, we're going to head on out. As we go up to the main entranceway of the cathedral. There, otherwise known as the Lily of the Mohawk. Now we're going to see if construction is going to get in the way of it. So we're going to make a little jog around here because I want to show you some things over there that we're going to need to get to. No problem, we can do that. There's interesting stuff all over the city, like here on the right. That bronze sculpture is dedicated to the first Spaniards that actually arrived here in 1598. They were the first Spanish settlers to arrive here. That was about 12 years before the official founding of Santa Fe. In 1610, sorry. Here we go. So they were under the leadership of the Spanish conquistador by the name of Oñate. But I'm going to get into his history in a little bit. It wasn't a very good one. And things weren't always all harmonious with it. And weren't always that great between the two cultures that clashed here basically in the 1600s, or late 1500s. So as we can get a shot of something here, I'm going to show you. We are the largest producing area in the United States of chilies, second largest in the world after the entire country of Mexico. You really can't talk about Santa Fe or New Mexico without talking about a little bit at least about chilies. So there's about 15,000 acres harvested every year of chilies in New Mexico. Most of it is centered around what is known as the Mesilla Valley, south of here. Here on the right, this federal courthouse, just post-Civil War and its construction. Obviously a grandfathered in structure. Out front is you'll see a protective barrier around this monument in front of the federal property here. And the feds put that around there, this monument, to protect it from some of the events that were taking place across the country they didn't want to have happen here, where people were tearing down monuments. It did happen here once. I'll show you an example of it. It can't be avoided on the plaza. But so they put this protective barrier around the monument dedicated to Kit Carson. That's his monument out there in front. Famous and important individual, Kit Carson was the real deal. Great book on the market called Blood and Thunder, gone through I don't know how many printings, and it's fascinating. The story of Kit Carson is the story of the American West and how it was settled, good and bad. Anytime you go below the surface, and they did here, they had to go below the surface to build underground parking. But anytime you do that, you're going to start uncovering things that are interesting and historical. Here they started digging up artifacts and ruins and remains and things that made them stop construction and get an archaeologist involved, and then they decided that those things were related to our closest northern pueblo, the Tesuque Pueblo. Those leaders had to be involved in putting down and deciding how those things would be treated going forward. Everybody decided that they would leave them alone and rebury them and continue construction. That's a process, though, that you have to go through anytime you do any significant dig in downtown Santa Fe. This bronze sculpture of Pedro Peralta, our first governor I mentioned earlier, came up here in 1610 to establish this northern capital city for the northern territory of Spain. And this street is the street that bears his name, Paseo de Peralta. Paseo de Peralta actually establishes the northern boundary of the historic district of Santa Fe. Obviously a grandfathered in structure is this one on the left. The Masonic temple that was actually built by the Freemasons in 1910, patterned after what is known as the Alhambra in Granada, Spain. It's the Moorish capital of their occupation of Spain for several hundred years. Alhambra in Arabic, which the Moors word, means the red, and hence the color. Bishop's Lodge Road on the left will take you up to Artist Road. Marcy Street. Always interesting stuff along Marcy Street. It used to be a great restaurant. I hate telling you about things that aren't there anymore. This one's still here, La Boca, one of the most popular restaurants in downtown Santa Fe. Spanish tapas style menu. Very popular with locals. And on my list of recommended restaurants. We missed the Shed restaurant, so I'm going to mention it again, and when we get back, if you want to ask me where it is, I can actually show you where it is, the Shed restaurant, northern Mexican style. So they unloaded right here, and after we sold everything out, went back to the attendants. Others followed them on some trips and everything. Chilies are a big deal in Santa Fe and in New Mexico, but in Santa Fe, art is a huge deal. We are a world-class art market here. Very much so. We're actually the third largest art market in the United States after New York and Los Angeles, respectively. And when you figure those two markets are well into the millions in population, or roughly 80,000. Kids love this one here. So this is the kinetic wind art. It's just really incredible. Just a little bit of wind gets these guys moving. Just a little bit, like right now. And then they're just mesmerizing. They're going to start at around $500 and go up to about $20,000 and $30,000. Beautiful visit in here. Some of the landscaping is just incredible. Stonework fountains, petrified wood benches, etc. in here. It's really, really beautiful. So I put this on my list, as well as that address back there, 225, must see on Canyon Road. As we come up, this guy is painting the doorway there. Off to the right of where he's painting, there's a plaque off to the right. That's by the Santa Fe Historic Foundation, and they're the ones that will make a building historically significant by putting a plaque off to the right. That building was historic. It was one of our first schoolhouses here. That was a kind of fine